Here's what Hassan Nasrallah said today.
Facts. We were targeted by the Israeli enemy. Thousands of pager devices were targeted and remotely detonated simultaneously by the Israeli Zionist enemy. By this attack, the Israeli enemy have crossed all restrictions, red lines, turning a blind eye to everything, ethical, human, legal, you name it. The attacks took place, and some of the devices detonated in hospitals simply because the pager is carried by the medical staff, pharmacies, marketplaces, commercial shops, and even residential homes, private vehicles, public roads, where thousands...
I do want to mention once again that, like, this is a totally separate country. This isn't Gaza. These are not Palestinians. These are civilians in a totally separate country that happens to neighbor Israel, okay? Now, that greatly expands in the eyes of the Israeli government. That greatly expands, like, the permission base that they have when America doesn't say anything about it and basically fucking supports it and continues giving weapons to Israel after Israel does this in direct contravention with international humanitarian law. Basically, this opens up an entirely new realm of possibilities for Israel where they're like, oh, I guess I could do this to whoever the fuck I want to. Right? I guess I could do this to whoever I want. That's number one. Number two, just a somber reminder that Benjamin Netanyahu also called American college students protesting Israel's apartheid and genocide terrorists as well. Just saying. Just think about that. So they consider, they consider valid targets all around the world. All right? All around the fucking world.
Of civilians, including women and children, are present. If the Israeli enemy are willing to target Hezbollah fighters, yet they targeted and attacked the civilian population. And above all, the Israeli enemy, in their attack, used a commonly used device used by the medical staff, public transportation, and even by average citizens. And on Wednesday, the attack was repeated where radio...
Are you just forgetting that Hezbollah launched missiles on Israel throughout this year? That's really funny that you're saying that, because even on that front, once again, the amount of missiles that Hezbollah has launched into Israel is nothing in comparison to the amount of missiles that Israel has launched into Lebanon. So, like, even on that fucking front, there's just not, like, there's never like any sort of protection. There's never any sort of, like, moral high ground for Israel. Okay? Israel has launched 80 times more missiles in the fucking Lebanon than Hezbollah has launched into Israel. That's number one. Number two, saying Israel targeted civilians is categorically false. They created a shelf company specifically targeted the draw in Hezbollah. No, they did target civilians because Hezbollah has civilians in it. Just because you don't fucking understand that reality does not change that reality, okay? Hezbollah is a political party in Lebanon with parliament seats. They also blew up fucking diplomats. They blew up fucking people who literally are members of the parliament. And their children. And not only that, but also beyond that, they blew it up in civilian territory. These are not people who were actively in combat. Okay? These were not people actively in combat. You cannot You cannot explode people in civilian territory on foreign soil, people that are surrounded by other civilians. Okay? Even if someone is marked as an enemy combatant, okay? Even if someone is a military general or a military commander or a soldier, okay? It would be akin to killing members of the Israeli Knesset. Okay? It would be akin to killing members of the Israeli Knesset around their family members and killing their family members as well. That's why the role reversal in the situation, the hypothetical of the situation, is important to reckon with. Okay? I don't know what the Israeli Knesset is. I'm just running a 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour. I'm just here. There's a 3-minute ad break coming for you. Okay. Just worry about that and how you're going to avoid it by subscribing for $6 or for free with the Twitch Prime. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. I totally agree with all your point, but if someone were to say, what if Ukraine used this to successfully kill Putin? Would that not be celebrated as well? How do I respond to people saying such things? I mean, Putin is infinitely closer to Benjamin Netanyahu in this process, so I think it's a ridiculous fucking argument to make regardless. Also, this is not what Israel did. Israel didn't kill Putin, okay? Israel didn't kill even the Putin equivalent. Israel blew up a shit ton of bombs in random civilian areas, trying to maim or kill purposefully members of parliament and even healthcare professionals, indiscriminately blowing up bombs that maimed thousands of people in a country technically that they're not even in war with. Okay?
Devices were also detonated remotely, turning a blind eye to whoever is carrying such a device. As a result of this act of war, act of aggression, dozens were killed, including civilians. Thousands were injured, suffered various injuries. Numbers will be established with time. Some of the victims were documented, registered once or twice. Some were not at all. At the end of the day, the number of victims was very high. Speaking of the enemy's intentions, they started their attack targeting a number of pager devices, fully aware that...
Is this not an act of war? It absolutely is an act of war. The situation is, at this point, it seems, judging by past actions, that neither Hezbollah, which has obviously an interest in maintaining civil affairs in southern Lebanon specifically, okay, and also Iran, it does seem like, judging by what they've done thus far, demonstrating tremendous restraint, that they do not want the smoke, okay? I'm not going to sit here and outflank like people that are living there with a lot to lose and portray myself like as a fucking Redditor who is begging for more Ukrainians to die and begging for people to be thrown into the goddamn meat grinder. It's their assessment. It's their analysis. I'm simply looking at I'm looking at it from over here, and it seems like they are legitimately worried about U.S. involvement and therefore have portrayed themselves as infinitely more rational actors as Israel becomes more and more belligerent. Okay? Part of that is because they know that America has 4,000 fucking Marines. in the region. They know that America will jump if Israel says jump. They know that America will send in military to not only defend Israel, but also to potentially invade Lebanon or even go into direct war with Iran. Isn't Hezbollah a terrorist organization? Terrorism as a designation is simply a political designation. It is utterly meaningless. America is a terrorist organization. The Republican Party is a terrorist organization. Israel is a terrorist organization. It doesn't mean anything. It's simply designed for you to think, oh, well, they deserve it. Okay? That's it. That's it. It's so you go, oh, well, Hezbollah exploded, so they're terrorists. They deserve it. That is precisely the reason why this designation exists. On the legal front, the reason why the designation exists is so that if you nab an enemy combatant, you can just like deny them human rights and torture them. That is the specific purpose, at least in the United States of America. It's a way to bypass, yes, habeas corpus. No human rights whatsoever. You can black bag them. You can do whatever the fuck you want. I feel like saying Hezbollah is a terrorist org is like saying the Viet Cong is a terrorist org. Well, they did say that. So, yes, it is exactly like that. Yes. And also, it's like saying the ANC is a terrorist organization. Nelson Mandela was on the terror watch list until 2008. Anyway. Yeah, the IRA is a terrorist organization. Black Panthers are a terrorist organization. It is whoever is in the crosshairs of American empire. That's it.
Those devices go beyond 4,000 in number. The Israeli enemy believed that these pager devices are used by Hezbollah fighters. When these pager devices were detonated, the Israeli enemy had willfully, purposefully, with formed design, willed to kill 4,000 people simultaneously at the same time. Regardless of the number who could have been also killed within the vicinity of the targeted devices. This was the willful, purposeful intention of the enemy, criminal intention. The same is repeated on the second day. Willfully aimed to kill thousands. To the Israel.
This massacre can be added to the decades of massacres in our region by the cancerous entity. It is an act of war. It is a declaration of war. The enemy tried to kill 5,000 of our people. Much of it was foiled. We have launched several committees to investigate how the attack occurred. How we are to some degree realistic. This was a big blow to our security and humanity. This was an unprecedented hard blow. Nasrallah lays out what he sees as an objective of Israel's attacks, to separate the two fronts of the war and to bring Hezbollah to surrender. He says empathetically, Hezbollah will not cease its strikes against Israel until the slaughter in Gaza stops. The resistance in Lebanon will not stop supporting the resistance in Gaza and the West Bank. That was the ultimate purpose of Israel. The reason why they did this, as Benjamin Netanyahu also fucking openly admitted, just like that other guy who's definitely not fucking connected to the intelligence agencies, said immediately after, before there were additional details, that like they're trying to decouple. They are trying to decouple Hezbollah from Gaza, right? The Israeli enemy are fools. It is true that they have technological edge, but that technological edge leads to the highest levels of foolishness. They fail to realize we are filled with unshaken faith. Nasrallah directly addresses Netanyahu and Gallant. You will not be able to make your illegal Israeli settlers return to their colonies in the north. I reiterate, the only way is by stopping the aggression in Gaza and the West Bank, not escalation, not all-out war. Other underlying objectives in Israel's pager attacks were to undermine our systems, our infrastructure, our infrastructure, and cause us to fall to our knees, to sow doubt among the rank and file. He says Israel failed in this goal, as those injured are more resolved to return to the battlefield and resume their duties. Nasrallah, Israel's objective was to undermine and destroy the infrastructure. Israel also believes these devices were carried by senior Hezbollah leaders. This is not a fact on the ground. I assure you, none of our infrastructure has been touched. I assure you, none of our infrastructure has not been touched. I assure you, our infrastructure is robust, mighty, integrated, coherent, and cannot be shaken by any such attack. Nasrallah challenges Israel's idea of creating security for itself by pushing Hezbollah out of Lebanon's south. We will continue to target Israel's north. The security buffer zone will turn into a trap, an inferno for your army. If you have doubts, go ahead and try. Basically saying, you know, go ahead, come invade Lebanon and see what happens. I mean, history has shown what has happened. They did do this before, and it didn't produce positive results for Israel at all. So it's understandable that he is reiterating this position. Like I've said before, I just don't see a way out of this unless America intervenes and stops Israel. AP, Qasim Qasir, a Lebanese analyst close to Hezbollah, said the detonating devices actually struck mostly civilian workers within the group and non-military security officials, which has allowed it to contain the impacts of its war effort. Analysts say the attacks were not a crippling blow. Nasrallah acknowledged that they were a severe blow, but vowed would emerge stronger than before. Hezbollah continued to launch rockets over the border Wednesday and Thursday, including one that killed 2 Israeli soldiers. Israel also, this is, for the record, Israel routinely does this, okay? They did this in Gaza. They'll go, oh, we've overtaken Khan Yunis. Oh, we've overtaken this area. We've overtaken that area. We have completely successfully dismantled Hamas in North Gaza. And then what happens? A week later, an entire fucking battalion gets murked, okay? So you didn't do that. So you just lied. All you did was reduce North Gaza into rubble and kill a shit ton of civilians. You didn't even fucking touch Hamas. And they're doing this exact same thing now in Lebanon. They have one fucking speed, dude. They have one speed. They have one move. They just kill a shit ton of civilians or try to kill military commanders, but like literally fail to do so, and then end up blowing up a whole bunch of people. And then they go, we did it. They do the fucking like third place champagne meme. You know, they're like, yeah, we did it. We fucking got him. We got him. And then the media's like, they got him. They did such a good job. And then the next day, bombs are still fucking flying. So you didn't do it. You didn't do shit. You did not achieve a strategic military goal here at all. All you did was terrify the Lebanese people and probably galvanize and embolden Hezbollah. You made them obviously a more successful political operation now because you're giving them very good reason to fight back. That's it. If I'm living in fucking Beirut, if I'm a Lebanese guy, okay, and I see a bomb explode at the marketplace and it's an Israeli bomb and I see everybody fucking celebrating it, it doesn't matter what my background is. I'm going to be like, I am in support of whoever is going to stop that. Okay? I am in support of whoever the fuck stops this. All right? That's it. I don't want fucking bombs exploding in my goddamn neighborhood. The plan is to get all the civilians out the way by bombing them and then take care of Hamas. Yeah, except that's an insane plan because they're just only killing the civilians in that situation. Every now and then, maybe you kill a couple fucking militants, but you're mostly just killing civilians, overwhelmingly killing women and children and the elderly, which is precisely what they've done. Pure evil. Analysts said Hezbollah will be able to regroup militarily and find communication workarounds. Detonating devices hit workers in Hezbollah civilian institutions, including healthcare, media operations, and fighters, dealing blow to groups' operations beyond battlefield. There you go. You blew up the fucking eyeballs of the dude that's doing like Hezbollah edits on Twitter, okay? That's who you did. That's who you fucking blew up. Good job. Now you still have missiles being lobbed into northern Israel. What happened? It didn't stop. If that was the goal, it didn't stop. Good job, dude. You killed a nurse. Like, congratulations. Even Lebanese people who do not support Hezbollah as a political party support them as a resistance movement? Of course. Here.
Down some of the basics again on the exploding pages. I mean, is it still your position that you are not saying publicly who you believe carried out these attacks?
I don't have any comment on it at all.
And is there any reason that you wouldn't say what your assessment is of who carried these out?
I just don't have any comment on it at all.
Okay. 2 days ago, you said the US was not aware of this incident in advance. Is that statement still accurate?
The statement I made on 2 days ago was absolutely accurate.
That you didn't know about the incident in advance?
Correct.
Okay. Because, I mean, there has been some reporting that there was a call from the Israelis to say that something was going to happen in Lebanon on Tuesday. Do you have any comment on that report?
The statement I made on Tuesday was 100% accurate.
Okay, and just to follow up on the point about targeting and international humanitarian law, I mean, presumably the State Department is aware of the amended Protocol 2 of the certain conventional weapons, which prohibits the use of booby traps or other devices in the form of harmless portable objects. Is that something you're taking into account when you're assessing and gathering information on this?
So we take into account all the relevant provisions of international humanitarian law when it assesses, when we assess incidents of this type and other incidents throughout this conflict. I don't pronounce judgment on those from this podium, but those are the types of things that we look at. Yes, absolutely.
And given, I mean, just to reiterate the point, I mean, thousands of explosions, 2 children killed. You know, we've seen explosions in public places, in grocery stores, on the streets, healthcare workers among casualties. I mean, does that feel to you like a targeted attack that falls within the remit of international humanitarian law?
So I'm not going to talk about feelings here. We deal in factual assessments of law. Those are the type of assessments that we conduct over time where we gather information and make those assessments.
So Israel broke international law? Oh, absolutely. Yes. Numerous. Attacking those declared enemy combatants when they're not in combat is a violation of international humanitarian law. Attacking people using booby-trapped communications devices that civilians use are a violation of international humanitarian law. Okay? They violated numerous international laws in an effort to do this, and they have done that nonstop, and seemingly they will never stop. Here is the UN staff, including 8 OHCHR colleagues detained in Yemen. Wait, what the fuck? Oh, that's just an additional update. Never mind. I was like, exploding pagers and radios, a terrifying violation of international law, says UN experts from Geneva. UN human rights experts today condemned the malicious manipulation of thousands of electronic pagers and radios to explode simultaneously across Lebanon and Syria as terrifying violations of international law. The attacks reportedly killed at least 32 people and maimed or injured 3,250, including 200 critically. Among the dead are a boy and a girl, as well as medical personnel. Around 500 people suffered severe eye injuries, including a diplomat. Others suffered grave injuries to their faces, hands, and bodies. These attacks violate the human right to life, absent any indication that victims posed an imminent legal threat to anyone else at the time, the expert said. Such attacks require prompt, independent investigation to establish the truth and enable accountability for the crime of murder. We express our deepest solidarity to the victims of these attacks, they said. The pagers and radios were reportedly distributed mainly among people allegedly associated with the Hezbollah movement, which includes civilian and military personnel. Now, remember, when you go to like other liberal outlets, when you go to CNN, when you go to fucking New York Times, or you go to other like liberal commentators that are celebrating these attacks and calling me a fucking terrorist and like fantasizing about me dying in Lebanon because I'm closely associated with Hezbollah or whatever, remember that they're not being serious about this kind of thing at all, okay? They're simply shooting the shit. And they're celebrating the evil acts that Israel has committed once again, okay? These are adults. These are adults who do care about like actual rules and the law and even sometimes the morality of the situation. So understand that there is a reason why the things that I said as soon as I found out about this are damn near identical to what the fuck the UN is saying now with their legal experts. Because if you have a moral compass and if you have a like bare minimum elementary understanding of international human rights, you can recognize what Israel did was unconscionable. Okay? That's it. Although, yes, laws don't replace morality, in this circumstance, this is both illegal and immoral. So, to the extent that international humanitarian law applies, at the time of the attacks, there was no way of knowing who possessed each device and who was nearby. Simultaneous attacks by thousands of devices would inevitably violate humanitarian law by failing to verify each target and distinguish between protected civilians and those who could be potentially attacked for taking a direct part in hostilities. Such attacks could constitute war crimes of murder, attacking civilians, and launching indiscriminate attacks, in addition to violating the right to life, the expert said. Humanitarian law additionally prohibits the use of booby traps disguised as apparently harmless portable objects were specifically designed and constructed with explosives, and this could include a modified civilian pager, the expert said. A booby trap device is a device designed to kill or injure that functions unexpectedly when a person performs an apparently safe act, such as answering a pager. It is also a war crime to commit violence intended to spread terror among civilians, including to intimidate or deter them from supporting an adversary, the experts warned. A climate of fear now pervades everyday life in Lebanon. So they accomplished that goal as well, which was to make Lebanese people fearful that their fucking household appliances might explode. It is also a war crime to commit violence intended to spread terror among civilians, including, I just read that. The experts urged the UN to carry out a prompt, effective, thorough, impartial, and transparent investigation into the attacks for which they offered assistance. States must bring justice to those who ordered and executed these attacks, including by exercising universal jurisdiction over war crimes. The experts urged all parties to refrain from further violations of humanitarian law and settle their disputes peacefully in accordance with international law. This is what the supposed adults, or this is what the adults in these supposedly important institutions, these arbiters of justice that are phenomenally important to maintaining the rule-based international order, are actually saying. That's the real assessment. That is the assessment of adults. But if you look at the New York Times, the way they're writing about it, the Gray Lady, the paper of record, they're calling this a Trojan horse in celebration of the ingenuity of Israel. Yet again, they found a bold new way to do terrorism, and that's awesome. That's the way that they're covering it. And of course, the American public that is primed into justifying any amount of atrocity against those who are automatically declared enemy combatant is at odds with the reality, then they just kind of avoid looking into it. Speaking of the United Nations, there is another part of this that I want to cover. By the way, report a wave of attacks on 70 targets in 20 minutes in southern Lebanon. That's what's going on, and I will be covering Mark Robinson in a brief moment. Here's what Israel's been doing. After intensive Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon, the IDF publishes a list of guidelines for civilians in several communities and cities in northern Israel. The guidelines apply to civilians in the Merom HaGalil Regional Council. The IDF calls on civilians in those areas to reduce movement outside of homes, avoid large gatherings, guard the entrances to the community, and remain close to bomb shelters. The guidelines are until further notice, the IDF says. Fire belts in southern Lebanon. Israel's going hard. Israel's going hard, blowing up southern Lebanon right now, and they're gearing up for any sort of retaliation in northern Israel. Okay? Yes, I know the uncommitted movement did not endorse Kamala Harris, and it is absolutely correct of them to do so. We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about
welcome
this.
to today's Verified Live. The Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has given his first public response to 2 days of attacks in Lebanon using sabotage communication devices. He described the attacks as an unprecedented blow to the Iran-backed militant group, but vowed to continue to fight Israel. The number of people killed by exploding pagers and walkie-talkies has risen to 37, with over 3,000 people wounded. The Hezbollah leader said the operation crossed all red lines.
Thousands of pages with.
Can you answer my question? How do they do this from all buying the same pages and shit? They either intercepted a shipment of pagers that they suspected was going to Hezbollah, or they set up a shell corporation in Hungary that was operating under the banner of a Taiwanese corporation that was... It's more likely that they intercepted the shipments.
Targeted by the Israeli enemy and detonated at the same time. With this operation, the enemy crossed all rules, laws and red lines. It didn't care about anything at all, not morally, not humanely, not legally.
Well, let's go live to Beirut, live to our correspondent Hugo Bachega. Hugo, you listened to the entirety of that. Give me your analysis.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting that he acknowledged that this was a massive security blow, unprecedented in the history of Hezbollah. And as expected, he promised a harsh punishment, but he didn't give any indication of how this response is going to be. But I think it was also interesting that there was no change in Hezbollah's position. Again, the indication is that Hezbollah is not interested in an de-escalation in this conflict with Israel. We've seen that for almost a year, Hezbollah has been attacking positions in northern Israel, saying that this is in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Hassan Nasrallah again said that this campaign, these attacks are going to continue unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza. So this has been the main hope here, to de-escalate these tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, and those negotiations for a ceasefire in Gaza have been unable to reach a deal. Hassan Nasrallah also reflected on those decisions that have been taken by the Israeli authorities to add the return of those residents who've been displaced from communities in northern Israel as one of the war goals. He said that these attempts by Israel will not succeed, and again that these attacks by Hezbollah are going to continue. So no clear indication of what Hezbollah is going to do. Again, as expected, some harsh words against Israel, saying that these attacks that happened here in Lebanon amounted to a declaration.
By the way, there's like there were journalists at the fucking funeral where the walkie-talkies exploded. Like, they were like Western journalists. So you're not even fucking safe. Like, technically, if you are anywhere where Israel has like set his sights on, set his crosshairs on, you were just not safe. This was a good take that I saw on Twitter. Why do so many health workers have Hezbollah pagers? Because Hezbollah pager isn't a real thing. Because that's what happens when supply chains are contaminated. Just because the propaganda needs you to be very stupid to believe it doesn't mean you're obligated to become that stupid. Please open your fucking eyes and open your minds a little bit. This is exactly the same fucking principle that I saw when like the Nord Stream pipeline exploded, and then the media was like, Russia did it to itself. And it literally made no sense. Okay? It just made no fucking sense, but the media still said it. And there were plenty of people who also repeated those talking points without even fucking thinking about it. You have no, like, once you intercept shipments of civilian communications devices, you have no way of fully knowing that those devices that are contaminated with explosives is going to be in the hands of civilians or people that you have considered your enemy, okay? It does not work that way. Oh. Political parties and armed groups who don't like or who you don't like or whatever, don't buy their supplies in big Looney Tunes box stamps, Bad Guys Inc. Does nobody understand how organizations source supplies? Has nobody ever had a job? Whether or not you're a big fan of Hezbollah ideologically or do not give them critical support in various political and armed actions is utterly immaterial here. You do not send weaponized electronics into the supply chain. Freak shit. The U.S. did this in Afghanistan. They had no idea what they were doing there, so they started arresting any Afghani wearing a Casio watch and waterboarding them in Guantanamo until they gave up info. I wish I was joking. I didn't know that. It's like poisoning a water supply. There's no guarantee who you'll kill. Like what currently happened in the West Bank? Yeah. Yeah, Israel gets to do that too, though. Hey, enough. Let's continue.
Declaration of war. He said it was a massacre, and again, reflecting on the suffering of the population here over the last 2 days.
Hugo, as you were talking there, we were showing pictures of those Israeli jets that screamed really low over Beirut earlier at the start of that speech. You've been there in the city over the last couple of days. I was talking to someone from Beirut only in the last hour who was saying how different the last 48 hours have felt there. What has it been like?
Exactly, and it has been different because we've seen that this conflict has been by and large contained to areas along the border between Lebanon and Israel. And now what's happened in the last 2 days is that this conflict has been felt by the population here of Beirut and other parts of Lebanon. And obviously people here are scared, they're very angry as well because of the extent of these attacks. These are explosions that happened as people were shopping, were with their families at home. Children are among the dead. But again, these are explosions that happened across the country and including in several parts here of Beirut, creating panic in the population. One of our producers received a message from a friend saying that she was replacing her Lebanese SIM card with an international one because he was concerned that her phone could explode. So I think this gives you a sense of the feeling here of how scared the population is after those 2 days of attacks.
Hugo, live for us there in Beirut. Thanks very much. Let's continue with this with our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucet, who's here with me. Lise, it was fascinating listening to the different stages of Nasrallah talking there. How weakened is Hezbollah, do you think?
Well, of course, he put on a very brave face today, saying that their communications network had not been shattered. But from everything that we have seen and just the numbers alone, right across the country, also in pagers and walkie-talkies are exploding, and also in Syria and in Iran, it is clear that their communications network has been crippled, their confidence has been struck, and also you heard from Hassan Nasrallah that this was the most devastating, most humiliating blow, unprecedented for them. So yes, they are in many, many ways, they are weakened by it. And the question will be, they will now feel honor bound. And this is what we're hearing from Hassan Nasrallah. He talked about a reckoning. They have to show that they are able and willing to strike back.
So there's a lot of Orientalism happening right here. And if you're oblivious to this, take it from a guy who at least is from this part of the world. They're honor bound. This is a violation here. I'll use like terminology from the Western world for you to understand. Okay, bro, you're American. I am, but I'm Turkish as well. And I grew up in fucking Turkey. And Orientalism works in mysterious ways. Right here, when she says they are honor bound, that they're humiliated, she is not talking about this as though this is a sovereign nation whose national sovereignty has been fucking violated and that they have, under international law, okay, an obligation and a right to respond and retaliate, okay? Oh, they're just like, barbarians who are honor bound to basically fucking retaliate because they're humiliated and scared and worried. And not that this is a political organization and a political movement that also has facets in like civil governance that would be understandably frustrated by the sovereignty of their nation being violated by their southern neighbors. Okay? It's ridiculous.
And some of our colleagues who follow his statements really, really closely are saying that what's different in this speech this time, we've had many defiant speeches from Hassan Nasrallah since the events of October the 7th and throughout this rising tension along that Lebanese-Israeli border, that he always says when they're struck in the aftermath, we reserve the right to respond at an appropriate time and place. This time, he warned Israelis, you will not just hear the response, you will see it this time.
Well, that's interesting, and interesting that you pick out those words. What do you make of Israel's strategy, the sorts of decisions that have been made over the last 3 days, adding a new war aim, we saw that Sunday night, then talking about a new phase of the war, then moving troops to the north of Israel?
Yes, there's been a steady drumbeat, isn't there? The eve of this, what has to be called a mass casualty attack, even though Israel says it has pinpointed, as you've been reporting, we've been reporting ever since they happened, it was very indiscriminate. They went off in markets and fathers' hands when their children were close by. Well, just before that, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Security Cabinet added to their war aims the return of 60,000 Israelis from the communities along the Lebanon border, returning to them to their homes. They have been living as displaced people ever since these tensions started rising in October. Then we had the pager count. Whether that was coincidence or not, there's a growing view, Matthew, and I'm sure you've reflected it on the program, that it was a kind of a use it or lose it moment, that some Hezbollah operatives understood that something was wrong with the system. Israel had to use this weapon, in other words, or else they would lose this kind of tool. And yet again today, even with the buzzing of the aircraft lower than ever before, there's this constant message from Israel: we know where you are and we can get you, even in your hands.
And only in the last 10-15 minutes, we've seen Antony Blinken. This time he's in Paris. He's been shuffling around both the region and other Western capitals, again asking, pleading for de-escalation. But every step is the opposite of that. Where is diplomacy, do you think, within all of what we're seeing?
Well, Amos Hochstein, who is the envoy...
I wonder who's doing the de-escalation. And I wonder who's the one who needs to de-escalate. I just can't seem to place I just can't seem to figure out. Like Anthony Blinken could say, we need to de-escalate all day, every day. But like, you know, you have the power to get your ally to do that. You're just not using it.
For President Biden to work on the Lebanon front, what has been called since the beginning the second front. He was in Tel Aviv when these tensions were ratcheted up, when they added this new Lebanon war aim to their list already, the Gaza list, including, of course, bringing the hostages home. Hassan Nasrallah today made it clear that the border would not be safe and calm, that the residents would not return home in the north of Israel until there was a ceasefire in Gaza. That is the view of Hezbollah. That's the view.
So serious question. For those of you who are like just now paying attention to this, like, doesn't this kind of feel like Israel doesn't give a shit about its own citizens and only uses them as like a talking point to justify its much larger agenda of endless conquest in the region? Oh, we added to our war aims. Oh, the 60,000 Israelis that used to live in northern Israel, they can no longer live in their homes. Bro, the more this continues, the more people feel less safe in fucking Tel Aviv and shit, the more they're just gonna leave Israel. And if you have the opportunity to live in fucking Israel or live in Paris, if you have the opportunity to live in Israel or live in fucking America, eventually you're gonna be like, yeah, fuck this shit. I'm gonna live in America. This sucks. And when that happens, it's Jover. And it's already happening. Okay? I don't think Israel, even from their own personal aims, their own personal ambitions, recognizes that reality. It's like, dude, if you're if you fucking, you know, if you'd rather live in like Boca Raton or Brooklyn or Long Island or fucking Israel, where you might get fucking struck with an Ansar Allah hypersonic missile, yeah, I think you would probably choose Boca Raton. So they're cooking their own political aims of like settling all the lands in the region, because the reality is the Haredi population, no matter how much they fuck, there's not going to be enough. Okay? There's not going to be enough like psychopathic, rabid, far right settlers to resettle all of this area. Okay? It's just not going to work. You're going to run out of people. That's it.
Of Iran, the only way to end this violence is to end the Gaza war. And yes, Antony Blinken is continuing to shuttle, he went to Cairo to talk to the Egyptians, who played a leading role. And there's a new proposal on the table. It doesn't seem as though it's one that can be acceptable to Sinwar, from everything we know about this most militant, the most even Hamas people describe him as the most violent in a violent organization, that he would not want to leave the Gaza Strip. But that offer is now being put on the table, it seems, from the reports that we've seen, that in exchange for releasing all of the hostages, that there would be so-called safe passage for Sinwar and other Hamas leaders to leave Gaza. But there are many who are saying that's just not the ilk of Sinwar. They're not going to leave.
I was talking about Antony Blinken and the message around Lebanon and de-escalation. It's worth just playing.
That's such a funny negotiation method. It's hilarious because it's like, first of all, why the fuck would Yahya Sinwar take that deal? Obviously, you're going to murk him after he fucking runs away from Gaza. So even on the self-preservation front, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, he would not take that deal anyway, because, I mean, this is just a straight up propaganda deal. Okay, it's a fake fucking point that they're making. Because if they ever bit on that, the Hamas side ever bit on that, they could be like, see, they don't care about the Gaza civilians that we are killing. That's it. Like I think they mistake. Hold on. I think they mistake the enemy's ambitions. Okay? I think they personally misunderstand. If they are being genuine, and this is not simply like a cynical propaganda fake line that they're dropping in there to be like, see, these guys don't care about Palestine at all. They just care about themselves. Ultimately, even if they were not being cynical, but they were being sincere with this offer, then they're mistaking their own ambitions with the enemy's ambitions. Okay? It's a case of pure projection. What do I mean by this? It's like you're assuming that this guy and all of the Palestinian resistance has no interest in genuinely freeing Palestine, and they just care about themselves. A similar thing happened with Yasser Arafat, right? Who originally was very popular amongst the Palestinians, and then by the end of the negotiations process was very unpopular. But one of the last lines offered to Yasser Arafat was Bill Clinton being like, I'll make a sick-ass mansion for you. Like, I'll give you a dope-ass mansion that is, overlooking I think it was like overlooking fucking Jerusalem, but you have to give Jerusalem to Israel. That was like one of the conditions that he tried to bargain with. And Yasser Arafat was like, yeah, that's great. Thank you for the mansion, but like they'll just execute me in that nice home, you know? That right there is a mistake. You're just assuming that like he also is a schemer in the same way, in the same ways that you are. Like trying to bribe the leaders of the Palestinian resistance movement like this can be successful in certain instances. I get why you would try to do that for Yasser Arafat, but I don't think Yahya Sinwar is thinking about it from the same perspective. It also is in line with the we are going to militarily defeat Hamas ass argument. You cannot militarily solve a problem that is born out of a genuine need for emancipation. Okay? It's all the same shit. Israelis just cannot comprehend why people would be like, yeah, of course I'm going to fucking fight back. You just killed my entire family.
Playing that clip in the next few seconds.
France and the United States are united in calling for restraint and urging de-escalation when it comes to the Middle East in general and when it comes to Lebanon in particular. We continue to work to get a ceasefire for Gaza over the finish line. And as we discussed with some of you just a day ago in Egypt, we believe that remains both possible and necessary. But meanwhile, we don't want to see any escalatory actions by any party that make that even more difficult.
Well, it is an extremely difficult situation at the moment for diplomacy. A final word, Lise, because you have the Iranians also watching. They claim they have
vowing retaliation.
Yes, they have unfinished business, according to them. How dangerous, then, is this moment that we've arrived at?
This is the most dangerous moment we've seen for decades in the Middle East, and a region that is all too often plunged into this kind of a violence. There have been many, sadly, for people of the region, many wars, but there has never been this kind of a war which draws in so many players at the same time, and so many players willing to use whatever it takes to get what they want to take.